If you've grown up around addiction and know what it's like to live with hypervigilance and feeling completely outside of your body, then this podcast is for you. Today I talk to Jolene Ironside and we go deep in this episode. Jolene specializes in teenagers with neurodivergence, and she's a somatic mind-body coach, yoga teacher, and holistic therapist. We talk about everything to do with addiction, hypervigilance, how perfectionism can become an addiction in itself, and we go in on suicide in a way that you might not often hear spoken about. I love that we also get into helping you understand how you can become an expert in your story, both cognitively and while remaining in your body. We also get into neurodiversity, labels, diagnoses, and the bigger truths around all of that stuff. This is a really powerful episode. There is a trigger warning, certainly around talking about depression and suicide. As I say, we go pretty deep on that. So hold on to your hat, look after yourself, and I'll see you on the other side. Dysfunction is everywhere, in our families, in our cultures, and in our systems. And this is Dysfunctional, the podcast that helps you name the things that most people can or won't see. Let's call it out, break it down, and maybe even start a bloody revolution. So, Jolene, I am very excited to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Josh. Excuse me. I'm really excited to be here, actually. So Thank you for having me.
Good, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. I sort of feel like I know you a little bit, but I feel like there's lots that I have an idea around, but that I'm excited. Maybe that's not the right word, but yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing about. So why don't you just, as a way of starting us off, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came to do that in the world?
Okay. I am a successful single co-parenter of two incredible teenagers, a fierce advocate for young people in schools. So I'm a trauma therapist specialising in teenagers and neurodiversity. I'm also a somatic mind-body coach, yoga teacher, and holistic therapist. So my journey into this work's been an experience. I was a travel agent, I was an accountant, and then I was a computer programmer.
Wow.
As well.
Wow. So that's like a massive change.
Yeah, it's huge.
Shit, I didn't know that. When did that change happen? When did you go from that to what you do now?
A lot of it's to do with the childhood, which we'll go into. And I came into accountancy. It was purely for to keep myself safe. Because of the things that had happened, I kind of said to myself, right, I need to get a good career so that I can completely manage myself and that I will never, ever be alone. So I studied everything and then went into programming. And I always kind of knew this is not really who I am. I could do it and I could do it very well. And I had a successful career for 20 years. But in the back of my mind, and also at the same time, I started learning like holistic therapies, massage, Indian head massage, Reiki, nutrition. So I'm doing all that on the side, traveling around the world, programming. And then I went on to have my children. And at that point, I had a real connection with the body. So I started to learn about relaxation techniques for young people. So at the same time, I've got two young children, I'm programming, and then I'm working in schools doing relaxation, mindfulness, that kind of thing. And I always knew I wanted to move into that field, but I kind of kept myself, it was that kind of safety, I need to stay where I am. And also self-esteem, that kind of thing of actually, if I branch out, I'm going against kind of what you're told that you should be doing in life. And it was really like a catalyst of events that by about 2018, which was the suicide of my brother, that's when I was like, right, I know for sure my work is with young people. And I wanted to combine the body work also with the mind. So I went on then to train as a counsellor that uses the arts for young people, so that in my work, I can bring in everything that I've learned and really provide a service that looks at, your sensory world, your mind, and also what's happening, all the sensations in your body. And that's it. Just kind of I think it was in COVID that I was like, I'm just going to switch now, because I'm trying to run both and I'm also trying to bring up a family. And there was just something that I got a lot of work through adoption support. So I was working a lot with adopted children, and it just came to the point where I was like, I need to switch now, and I need to really open up to that. And once I did, it was like, this is exactly where I should be. This is a complete extension of me. Whereas in the programming, I was like, I'd get up and go to work and I'd have to literally shut every part of myself down, move into my head in order to do that job. So my body was very closed. I'm kind of just in it. Whereas this work is I'm open, and this is part of who I am. If that kind of makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And that just for people listening, that point that you said about having to go up into your head, like I hopefully we can kind of pull some of that apart as we get into this, because I don't know how much people understand that, but it really, really resonates with me. I think that in the Western world, actually, everything is about pushing you up into your head. And I even think that some of the things that are called solutions for what we call mental health, right, are actually just new ways to push people up in their heads. And I just don't think it works. I think it's just more of the same, but in sort of like slightly different clothing. But it feels like from very early on, even, going back a number of years, you always had this idea, particularly once you had children, it sounds like, of this connection with your body.
Yeah.
Like, do you know where that came from? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. So I grew up in the 80s when and I grew up with a family of addicts, and it was a time when like everybody's was having parties and stuff like that, except my family's parties never ended. So there was some fun, but it was extremely chaotic, like really chaotic, and I never knew what I was coming home to. So from like a really young age, I had to become, well, I became hyper vigilant to what was in the room. Any kind of, like, obviously I didn't know this at the time. This is from years of kind of trying to work out what's been happening. But I'm sensing everything in the room, the slightest eye contact, the slightest tone of voice, and I'm adjusting myself to make sure that I don't cause any issues here, or how do I need to behave? How do I need to do this? And immediately, I've learned this through body psychotherapy, which we'll come to. But as a young child, you think you are the problem. You're the one that's causing all of this behavior. So I'm also, like, I self-harmed a lot. At that point, I'm disconnecting from my body. So that, the self-harm was to help me feel something, because I couldn't feel anything anymore. And I became extremely anxious, and I found I never really knew who I was. And I'd go into school and I'd just fit every situation. I would just fit, and I never felt like I belonged anywhere, but I could be part of everything. Which also kind of leads you to that you're just adapting all the time.
Yeah.
And when I was 14, I went out to live, moved out to live with my nan, and she kind of helped me through my exams and things like that. And for me, what happened was, much like I was saying about the career, I moved into my head. I studied everything I could to make sure that I was safe. So I went along the perfectionist route. My brother went along the addiction route, and my sister fell somewhere in between of that. And so I thought, as long as I'm achieving and as long as I'm doing all of this, then I'm going to be okay. I I didn't really drink. I did normal teenage kind of drinking, that kind of stuff, like
Yeah.
normal stuff. But the effect, the spiraling effect that would lead to that, like if I got drunk for 2 weeks afterwards, I am over analysing every single thing. But also in my family, you weren't accepted unless you were a drinker. So I was kind of on the outside of that. So I was really scared of alcohol and scared of people being drunk around me. So anyway, I went on to study so much stuff, and I moved to London, lived there on my own. Like my nan used to send me food packages and things like that, and that's when I went on to do this career, completely disconnected from my body. So
Yeah.
completely like I'm going to be the best programmer there is, and then I went on to have my children, and then I was like, I'm going to be the best mum there is, and that kind of perfectionism, whilst we've had amazing times, I also know that I over perfected as well. I probably over parented maybe at times, which I don't beat myself up for. I just had in my mind, I cannot let my children experience what I experienced.
Yeah.
And that, so then I was like, right, I'll study every single parenting book now. So again, like I'm not listening to myself at all. I'm just, if I know it and I can explain it, then I can do it. And obviously that comes with a lot of burnout. You're there constantly. And also I think probably looking back, maybe for the other parent, it maybe pushes them out a little bit as well. I can own my part in that kind of thing as well. So your question was what led me, wasn't it? What led me to
Yeah.
here?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So in 2018, we've had 3 male suicides in our family, and the 2018, the third male suicide was my brother. So he, like I said, he was an addict and drugs and alcohol, and we knew this. So we had a very, very close relationship with him, and we knew it was coming as well. And whilst I'm often conflicted on this, Josh, and I don't know if this will be a bit controversial, but when people say you can prevent it, well, it was his choice to make, and the choice was right for him at the time. And I kind of feel like, I was in touch with him every day. He was trying to, he'd been clean for 2 weeks. We're talking, and I know he hadn't processed a lot of what happened in our childhood. Like, I went into therapy from age 14 and was just in and out and researching everything I could about addiction. He was that kind of, no, I'm all right, I'm all right, I'm all right. He
Yeah.
wasn't okay. And his last day, people that saw him, I didn't speak to him on his final day, but people did see him, and what they fed back was he was so happy. And I'm like, because he's made the decision. He knows, like, the world was too harsh for him, and it was too painful. He was so sensitive, and that, I think, is not recognized enough, which is kind of how I've been led to you, because he had that real soft side to him, but the drugs and alcohol helped him cope in a world where he didn't fit in.
Yeah.
He didn't feel right. And so he'd had this incredible day. He'd seen some friends. He was really happy. And then the next day we got the phone call that, he's done it. And I suppose as a family, we've known for years this was on the cards. You never give up hope. you hold that hope every single day that he will get the program. I've got family members that have gone to AA and they're 23 years sober, but he tried, and he couldn't do it.
I think, sorry to interrupt you a little bit, but I just, the point that I felt quite emotional when you were talking about the point of, like, some of the things we often hear is that every suicide is preventable. And I'm sort of with you. I don't know how controversial it is to say that. But I understand the kind of grace that some people get when they don't end their life, and what that's driven by. I think often as humans, we want the heady answer, right? Which is to go up into our head, and every suicide is preventable. You just need to find the right thing for the person, and I just feel I'm somebody who planned to take my own life, and I talk about how at peace I was. I was very, very, very close to doing it. I was in the middle of the going to say goodbye to everybody, and was very at peace.
Yeah.
In that chaotic stage of my life, the people that saw me in that time would have felt that I was in a very good place, because, by the way, I was.
Yeah.
Because finally I was going to get some peace.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that two things can be true, and you've highlighted them both for me, which is we should never give up hope and always have the belief that we can help people while they're still here. And when I lost my mate to suicide who was in sobriety, right? I met him early on in my own journey in 12 steps, right? So similar story. Yeah. And I hear people all the time say, like, when they're asked the question, how did it change? How did you change? How did you manage to get and stay sober? All of that kind of stuff. What was the turning point for you? And I often see people say, I just wanted it enough, and I had to be willing to, like, fight for it, and I had to be, and all of those things are true about me, but that's not why I'm here and my mate's not. And why am I here? Because my mate who's dead took his own life. He wanted it as much as me. He worked at it as hard as me. Like, our lives were comparable. You couldn't be like, yeah, he just had it worse. Or I don't know what the difference is between me and him, but it's not something I've done. No. And I think that's the hardest thing about addiction and suicide, is that, like, if I just say, I'm still here because I wanted it enough and I just found something in me, like, I understand why people say those things, but I don't think they're a reality. Why have I got some grace and my mate didn't? I don't know.
No.
And I think that's those unanswered questions are the hardest thing. So it's been a really long way round of me saying to you that I understand exactly what you're saying when you say that. Does that make sense, what I've said?
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. And thank you for sharing. And I think as well, if it was just, I wanted it enough, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in, would we?
Suicide and addiction wouldn't exist.
No, exactly.
Because we'd go, you just need to get people to see this, do this, and then it wouldn't exist. It wouldn't exist because we would give everybody that answer. And everybody that didn't take it would ultimately, if you strip it back, be not very good people. You'd go, well, they just fucking didn't want it enough. So then we would actually look down on them in a stigmatized way, which is completely wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well, as a child, I used to take my parent to AA sessions, and it just wasn't working. And because that's you trying to make somebody do something that they're not ready for.
Yeah.
And I think when it came to my brother, it was like, I can only be alongside you. I'll be with you where you are. I can't force you. I can't make this happen for you, but I'm going to love you through your struggles. And, like we said, you hold the hope constantly. And for some, it's enough, and for others it's too much.
Yeah,
It's too much.
I hear that, and I like it's so like interesting when I hear you talk about how what you experienced when you were younger. And in some ways, that environment I think was common in the 80s and 90s, right?
Yeah,
Not all, but lots of parents had these parties on the weekend, and everybody, even my dad was an alcoholic, but my mum married my stepdad, and neither of them have got addiction struggles. But particularly because of what I had already experienced with my dad, they would have typical 90s. We would go to the pub and sit in the corner with a can of Coke and a bag of crisps all day. And then
yeah,
everybody at the pub would end up back at our house. And then the next morning, nobody's opening the curtains till 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And that wasn't like strange in the 90s. Very, 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 very normal,
yeah,
quote unquote normal. So like you had that experience. When I think about what you said, that when you drank, you would drink like typical teenagers did. Again, I think that's changing, by the way. But like back then, it was sort of very normal to go down the park and drink alcohol, right? And then you said you would overanalyze what you did for the next 2 weeks when you were drunk. I would wake up having blacked out and think, I fucking can't wait to do that again. And that, so that's the dip, but that's the
yeah,
difference, right? So what again, this is whole like that's not because you were a better person than me. You'd played a different role and you had slightly different characteristics or whatever that meant that you went along the perfectionism route. But the core wound is the same,
yeah,
right? The core
yeah,
wound is the same. And I want, if I can, there's some more I want to talk about, but just before we do that, I can hear a lot of love for your brother in you, right? You have a
yeah,
lot of love for your
yeah.
brother. Can you just, so that when we've mentioned him in the podcast, he's not just a statistic or like somebody who died by suicide. Can you just tell us a little bit about why you loved your brother and the person that he was, so that we can do that for him as well?
Yeah, absolutely. He was a character from day one. So I'm the youngest, and he was the middle child, and he was always full of life. He was impulsive, but he just had an ability to light up a room, and he was the life and soul of the party. Behind that, like he could see me for who I was as well, and likewise. And because my sister was older, she left home quite young. Me and my brother were there, so we'd often we'd walk home from school. He'd go into the baker's, buy one of those massive lardy cakes, which we loved. We'd go home and play on the ZX Spectrum, Daley Thompson, the
Fucking hell, yeah. That's a memory unlocked, yeah.
so we'd just be sat there like that on the computer, and we just hung out. Like you look back at the photos, like we spent. I grew up in the south of England, spent a lot of time at the beach. I'm a summer baby, so we were always there, and yeah, he was just silly and fun, and I think he on the flip side of that, he didn't see that in himself. So even like at his funeral, he it was packed out and there were people outside the building as well. He would have never have felt that love, but he could give it. And he's one of those people, like, you could call him up at any time and he would be there to listen to you and support you.
Fuck, man, it's making me cry. I don't know if you can see it, but it's making me cry a little bit. That, like, I'm so glad that I sort of asked you to do that, because I think that we often talk about, particularly men in this instance, right? Men that die by suicide, and so often they are the man that you just talked about, which is what, by the way, which is what I I very much believe I'm like that. Everything you just said about him resonated. You know what I mean? Like, I get a lot of love in the work that I do, and I can kind of take it in the moment, but it's crazy how I can do an event or do a thing. Like last night, I had 150 people on a breathwork, right? And it's amazing. and I can still wake up the next morning and like it's not enough to stop me having moments where I just completely hate myself and just feel like everyone would be better off if I wasn't here.
Oh,
But
Josh.
but you understand,
No, I
like
don't
so like this is
completely.
why I'm truthful about this stuff, because I've done a lot of work on myself, but I still recognize that in me.
Yeah,
You know, I still recognize that I'm this fun. I love laughing and joking, and my way of dealing with social situations is to become the life and soul and the center, and that's how I handle it. And people love it and all that sort of stuff. But behind it all is that constant struggle, that inability to be able to see what other people see, and
yeah,
I think that's the hardest thing for a lot of people that we lose by suicide, is that ain't enough. Look, even this is the another thing, right?
yeah.
Even loving these people wholeheartedly is sometimes not enough.
No,
And that's the for people that love somebody that's died by suicide, that's hard, because you've got so much love to give and it's not enough.
no, no. I really do hear that, Josh. And I'd say, so I have exactly the same, like what you're just saying. And my mum always says to me, she said, you have all the isms of an alcoholic, so all the patterns, all the behaviors. You just didn't have the alcohol, because I
Yeah.
have that ability. I could totally go down that route. I know I could. So that overthinking and everything, and that kind of, I don't know if it's an emptiness or what it is, but you just, it's been, I think probably in the last few weeks I've started to get to the point where I'm like, maybe I'm all right.
Yeah.
Maybe I am okay in the world. But like you can do events or do really good work, get really good feedback, yet you wake up the next day and it's like, yeah, but you messed that bit up though, didn't you?
Yeah. 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 And it's even like, I guess that like mine doesn't even show up by that. I can be a little bit like, yeah, that was fucking amazing last night. I smashed it out of the park. But you are still a fucking idiot. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? That's
yeah,
you know
yeah,
what I mean? That's what my head will say. Like, like, or even I'll go like, I'll just find a way. I'll be like, you did
yeah.
this amazing thing last night, and look at you. You still hate yourself.
Oh,
So you know what I mean? So like,
yeah, yeah.
I mean, look, I'm using that as an example. I actually woke up feeling pretty good today, right? But like, I'm using it as I'm talking about like how these things can and do happen, and even like when you say that the whole ism, you have all of the isms of an alcoholic, but you just don't drink alcohol. That's another thing that I try and get people to understand. I do a lot of stuff in the, less so now, but I used to do a lot of stuff in the addiction space, right? And people
Mhm.
would be like, oh, here's Josh. He's got lived experience, which we can all take note of. And I used to sit in these room with these people, and I used to think, most of you in here ain't no fucking different to me, right? You're just like in the addiction space. A prime example would be I'd be wheeled out as an alcoholic who's got sober, right? And I'd be sat in a room full of people who say they have no lived experience, and I'd be like, you're just fucking addicted to helping people. Like you've got the same wound as me, but
Yeah,
your methodology is to save people, and and they'll get lost in that, and they get blinded by that. So I'm like, and they have to separate themselves and go, because it comes back to what we were saying, right? Which is they're going up into their heads of how do
yeah,
we save everybody in addiction, and let's do it in our heads, and let's make it rational so that we can hang our hats and go, we've got figures and numbers that prove it. And it's all about avoiding the body, which I
yes,
guess is like kind of a nice segue into, I want to talk about this idea of like dropping down into your body. Was there a moment in your life when you started to realize it? Was it a moment, or like was it a slow transition? Tell me about how you came to
yeah.
that realization.
I will, and it's all linked to the suicide. So obviously, like I would just want to quickly add, Josh, like we celebrate my brother, and when there are anniversaries or things like that, and we go out for dinner, there's a photo of him on the table, and we really celebrate his life. But anyway, what happened was after that, because you kind of, I mean, my family's really tight. But I watched, you lose your mum and dad in that same process. And my sister, although we came together, obviously you're all changed. So my thoughts were, right, he died in November 2018. And I was like, I need to go straight into therapy. And I knew talking therapy, because I'd had it for years, I got to the point where this for me, it has its place, but for me, it's not what I need. And so I found body psychotherapy. So I booked in January, and like you have a consultation with like the therapy director first of all. So I'm sat there. She's like, "Tell me about your childhood. Tell me like what's led you here." I've reeled off this whole story, and I'm looking at her, and her eyes are getting wider and wider. And she said to me, "Right, Jolene, you have a story, a massive story. I've heard every word of it, but you cannot connect to that story. So you can tell me cognitively everything that's happened in your life, but your legs are flying round, you're not even noticing, your body's doing all this stuff, like you can't feel what's happened to you." And that was the point. I was like, this is exactly where I need to be. I don't need to go over all of my childhood. I've done it for 20 odd years. I need to feel the pain that I have totally disconnected from.
Yeah.
So I went through it was 3 years of body psychotherapy, and we would talk. Obviously, like sometimes bits of the childhood would come up, but it was very much kept in the present day, what's happening. And as I'm talking to her, all the while she's getting me to check in what's happening in your body. At the same time, my addiction studying, basically. Now I can look back at that. So the same time I'm studying, the body keeps a score, all of that kind of stuff, and sensory integration, and starting to feel again. And that was hard, Josh. Like she would literally say to me, when you're driving, obviously you're concentrating on the road, but she said, I need you just to go like lampposts, clouds, cars. And I'm like, oh, I can't do this. Like, I need to try and live. But she's like, you have to, because you are not taking anything in. And she'd constantly, like, I'd go in there and I'd be talking to her, and she's like, put your feet on the ground. I wouldn't even notice. I mean, they're flying up, I'm cross-legged. I'm like, I didn't even know what was going on. Increased my exercise as well, because for me it slows my thoughts down. That's the only reason I exercise, is because I overthink everything. And if I'm lifting weights, that kind of stuff, I'm connecting to my body. So it was that, and I just thought, this is phenomenal, and this is the work that I want to be doing, because we are, from a young age, we try to explain how we're feeling or what's happening to us, and we're told, no, you don't. And I'm like, I could see you've been drinking. No, I haven't. Okay, I must be wrong. So, and we're taught not to listen to our intuition, not to listen to our gut instinct. And I feel it very, very strongly, but I'd switch it off because I could explain why I shouldn't be doing that, or, so it was that then kind of connected all the dots for me.
Everything that you're saying just resonates so deeply with me. I really feel like, look, again, this isn't a slant on therapy, right? I think everybody should do therapy. I think, or I think people should try it if they want it. I'm not against it. But I did exactly this, right? I got to the point where I was an absolute expert in all of the things that happened to me. And I actually found myself a little bit, and I think people end up doing this, by the way, or trying to look for something else in therapy. Well, it must be something else. I don't know. Maybe I was abused by someone somewhere or something like that. But that's as crazy as it's not, right? Because I was like, I've been through what I saw in my dad. I fucking know it all. And and I had therapists and people that I worked with that were helping me. Yeah, there must be something else. Let's find something else to go through,
Yeah.
and it was all disconnected from my body,
Yeah.
and it was all disconnected from feeling.
Yeah.
I became an expert at talking about my feelings so I didn't have to feel them,
Exactly. Exactly.
and
That.
and it's a great place to hide, by the way, because if I can go, oh yeah, when my dad died, I was just a child, and I buried all of my sadness and da da da, and I could talk about it. I'll talk about how I buried it all, right? But
Mm.
nobody ever said to me, "And have you ever felt the sadness
Yeah.
since?" And because I'd always be like, well, I dealt with it, and da da. I'd always give you a rational answer, and I see it so often, by the way, when I talk to other people, and they talk about stuff, and I go, oh yeah, like, that must have been a lot. How did you feel when it? And there's like, oh, well, I'm angry. They give you rational answers all the
Yeah.
time. And
Yeah.
it stopped people in their tracks when you just go, well, where did you feel that in your body then? And
Yeah.
if they will try and wrangle out, if you go, stop. When you say that, where do you feel it in your body? And you see people go, oh my God,
Yeah.
because and that's why I think, there's this disconnect in the world of like healing and mental health where nobody's letting you, like, we think that if you're feeling sad, the job is like, shit, they're feeling sad, let's get them to talk about it, let's get them, but you're okay, you don't have to feel that bad, and they did their best, and then people go, okay, yeah, all right, I don't feel sad anymore. It's
Yeah.
like it should, we need so much more of this, like, no, 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 you feel sad, let's have it out, let's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
let's let it come, and that's why I think that you see people get obsessed with exercising. Like, we were chatting just before we came on about me doing the running. Yeah, but when you get to a certain stage of that running, it shuts your mind down, it shuts your head down, and you're
Yeah.
just focusing, you're just in your body, and it's a new experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's connecting the head to the body. I always say when your heart and your head are connected, that's when you can truly live your life. Yeah. And I think we often disconnect the two because it feels so scary. Is
Yeah.
that the kind of work that you've ended up doing in schools then as a result of this? Is this what you're doing, connecting people back to their bodies?
Yes, yeah. So, and I would also really like to share, Josh, how I came to you as well,
Okay, yeah,
because
let's
this
do
is
it.
all part of the story. But yeah, so in schools, I think after my brother, there comes a shift where you're like, I've experienced some bad stuff, and also probably one of the worst things you can experience. So actually, what have I got to lose by quitting in the corporate world and following this? And my kind of belief is, if we can start young and work with the teenagers that are often missed, hopefully, in the relationship that you can create with them, hopefully they could go on to perhaps not choose the route that he chose. So now, so obviously I deep dived into everything: autism, ADHD, OCD, sensory integration, the body work, and created a whole kind of package. Really, obviously work with the young person, see where they're at, see what's appropriate to them. So I do work in a school, specialist school, and I do really, because there's a lot of trauma, and you kind of just have to show up and work with what you work. You have a bit of a plan of what you're going to do, but it is to work in their sensory world. So you need to know, well, if I take certain smells in, that could be a catalyst for somebody. It could be soothing for someone else. For somebody else, it could send them into the panic. Like, I need to know all of this kind of stuff. And we'll create a space. I do group work and coaching. There's some yoga stuff in there. There's a lot of massage in there, because we know that touch is really soothing, and also, like, create somewhere that they can come, and they don't have to be in that social defense. They can just let go, and if they don't want to join in, equally, that's fine as well. And then I run a neuroaffirming practice as well. So really kind of working with young people to understand their neurobiology, advocating for them in schools, so that they have the supports they need, rather than constantly getting into trouble for actually this is how my nervous system works and I'm trying to regulate, and you're saying it's not okay, sending me out and going into the what's wrong with me, why am I different to everybody else, that kind of stuff. So I do work a lot in schools as well with young people.
I have a question for you that I don't know if you'll be able to answer, but it comes to my mind. So let me give you a little bit of backstory on it, just to try and help you understand why I'm asking the question. Right. So I understood my behaviors and the ways that I were originally through the lens of trauma. Right. So like I got sober 13 years ago. So around 12 years ago, right, I realized, oh my God, right? Like, because my initial thing was, I'm an alcoholic. Everything's like this because I'm an alcoholic, right? I do this because I'm an alcoholic. I do this because I'm an alcoholic. And then like, I went through this other lens of actually my drinking was a reaction to what I was feeling, and what I was feeling. I started through the lens of trauma, right? I'm like this because of the trauma. Hypervigilance is because of the trauma. Then I learned about highly sensitive people, and then I was like, oh, fucking hell, that's me as well. But then all of that led to a path of like what I would call radical self-acceptance, right? I learned that I am this way, and I need to learn to find ways to live with the way that I am. So
Yeah.
I knew that like transitions, if I go from one environment to the other, that can be overwhelming for me. I just learned that, right? I learned that through the lens of trauma and sensitivity, and then I learned that, and I sort of, realized in the end that I needed to be in my body and love myself as much as I could, right? People weren't talking about neurodiversity a decade ago in the way that they are now. And so the way that everybody now talks about neurodiversity, 10 years ago, when I said I was like this, people would go, oh, have you ever looked into trauma? Whereas now when I talk about these symptoms, behavior traits, whatever you want to call them, people go, oh, you sound like you're ADHD or autistic, right? Do you have an opinion on like
I do.
what it is? Because just to finish my piece, right? I'm like, today, I'm like, the reason I don't think I'm that bothered about getting a diagnosis, right? And it doesn't resonate with me is because I see a lot of people going, oh my God, and then I woke up, it's because I'm ADHD and autistic, and it all makes sense, right? And that's great. I love that it's doing that for people. But I sort of feel like I already did that. And actually, I got to the point now where I don't care if it's ADHD, autism, trauma. So I don't really care. Like, I've got to this place where I have to accept who I am. So, yeah, I don't know how much sense that makes to you, but over to you.
I'm smiling, Josh, because your story is exactly mine.
Yeah.
Exactly that. So, and it was after the 3 years of body psychotherapy. I sat in there one day, and I thought, hang on a minute, I've dealt with all the trauma. You are fundamentally now asking me to do things that don't match me, and they don't sit right with me. And so like you, I was like, all right, I had the same thing. Well, you're like this because of the trauma. You're like this because of this. You're highly sensitive, because all of that I had. But all the time, therapy was asking me not to be that as well.
Yeah.
And so, like earlier when I said, my legs would be flying up, or I need to have my legs up because I am hypermobile as well, but also because of how I am as a person, I need that to be grounded. So sitting in that office and I was like, okay, we've discussed everything. I can feel everything. We've gone through all of that. Now the things you're asking don't feel right to me. So they're of a model that you're using, but they don't feel, it's not aligned with who I am. And that's when I then started to look at right, my work, all the young people that were coming to me, trauma, ADHD, autism. So I started to deep dive down that route. And I was like you, I was like, that's me. And the same thing, I was like, I did the screens which showed autism and ADHD. So I think for me, it was like, right, the trauma's cleared now. this is where I am. I personally don't need a full diagnosis. I'm going to create a life that works to me. I know I see the world differently and I know I experience it differently. I don't need to, that's enough for me. This is how I function. I work on feeling energy and things like that. And I know when I'm going against myself as well. Because when my marriage separated, I briefly dipped back into programming, and I felt wonky in there. I
Yeah.
was like, I can't go back to that now. Like I've opened up. This is who I am, and so I think it was more about understanding. Okay, I experience this like if I go into a supermarket, I'll get completely overwhelmed. I end up spending like about 300 quid on fruit and veg. It's going to go off in 2 days.
Yeah.
And before I'd think, oh, you're such an idiot. Why can't you even do shopping? Why can't you? And now I'm like, I know why. There's too many people in there and I can't focus on anything. So I'm just taking the lot. I don't know that's kind of a basic example.
Yeah.
But now I can say to myself, it's overwhelming, Jolene. Just do your shopping online. Everybody's safer. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So that's kind of where I am with that. I think for young people, like we really work with it's not a disorder, it's the way your neurobiology works, and this is how it works for you. For young people, the diagnosis helps because of the support that you can get in school. And also what I see is that inner critic, that inner voice that's telling them that they're not good enough, when actually it's because it's too loud for me in here, or there's too many transitions. I find it hard to go from one thing to the next without having that space. And we see in schools, it's like lesson finished, you've got 5 minutes to get to the other side of the building, and if you're late, you're in detention. So they're all that panic, and they're still trying to process, I need to finish this lesson, pack up my things, and then walk to the next place. It's not there anymore.
Yeah.
So does that answer?
Yeah, it does. It does. It answers the question. And that's why I think certainly right now, diagnoses are important for so many young people because it gives them the access to the support that they need, right?
Yeah.
Look, I do have a belief and a hope and a vision where you won't need a diagnosis because the system won't be so shit.
Yes.
We'll just give children the support that they deserve. Because I had it with my son, right? So I think I've talked about this before on the podcast, but my son's school, by the way, are fucking brilliant, right? He's got particularly his year head and like the child support. I don't know what our title is, but they're both brilliant. They both understand my son. They're great. But I have lots of meetings up there, right? And I remember on one meeting we sat down and we listed all of his struggles and all of the things that he needs as a result of what he struggles with at school. And at the end, one of the other people in the meeting was like, okay, I think the next thing is to get him a diagnosis. And I was like, why? And they were like, well, because that's how he'll get the access to the support that he deserves. And I was like, I said, no, we've just listed all the things he needs. We've all agreed. We're all in agreement. He needs these things. And they were like, yeah, and the best way to get support for them is a diagnosis. And I was like, no, it's not. I was like, no, it's not. I was like, this becomes a human rights fucking issue. If we're sitting here and we've all agreed he needs them, I don't need to get him a diagnosis, right? Yeah. So like, I was probably being a little bit facetious, but like that, I've got this thing around like, the school once said to me, he has real difficulty sitting still. And I went, cool, you better find a way that works where you don't have to sit still then. Because by the way, because it's true, right? The only problem, not being able to sit still for very long, is only a problem if you need to sit still.
Yeah.
And so, maybe my advice to anybody would be, if you have a problem sitting still, try and build a life where you don't have to sit still.
Yeah.
Right? Because that seems more normal to me. And that's, that's the kind of thing that I want to change. I think we should build a world and we should build a society and a system that doesn't need to label somebody as disordered in order for them to get the help and support that they deserve, right?
Yeah,
that's absolutely where I am. So I believe in neurodiversity, right? I absolutely, by the definition of autism and ADHD, I'm definitely on both of those spectrums, right? As is my son. My belief is a world that doesn't need to other you. Because again, it's like, I love movement, right? I wiggle my arms a lot when I'm talking because I learned as a kid, if I do this a lot when I'm talking, it's a way of hiding the fact that I just actually want to sit there and do this. And then people, yeah, and then people go, oh, that's stimming, right? And like, I even get a little bit like,
Yeah.
I don't fucking want a word for it. Why
Yeah.
why can't we label you as weird because you don't need to do it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I do think that I get a bit like that. Maybe I'm being defensive and maybe like, but I think some of that fight that I've got in me is born out of, I realized at a very young age, by the way, that I was more in tune with what was going on with my sensitivity than adults. But
Yeah.
I was made to think that I was crazy and arrogant because I thought that. Because I used to sit in and I used to think with some teachers, I fucking know exactly what's going on. I know, I can tell you've had a fucking argument last night with whoever you live with.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And as a kid, I just in the end would use it, and I would use it again. I think I'm going to fucking tap every button. But like, I opened up to it, I think. And that's why I found that sort of radical acceptance, like you're talking about, just with the shopping example, just shop online, and like I go to social events, and then when I've had enough, I'm like, I'm going. See ya. And then, but like people are like, oh, you can't do that because it's like the social norms that we've built. But this is where it gets crazy because people say to me, oh yeah, you struggle with social norms. That's a thing of autism. And then I'm like, I just get a bit like, nah, the fucking social norms are the problem.
This is exactly it, isn't it? Like we're made to think we're into these such boxes, aren't we? And actually, if you just let people do the things they do and just allow them to be there, we wouldn't be in this state. The system that you've built doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with you. I'm like, if I'm at a social event, no one's going to see me for about 5 days afterwards. It doesn't mean I'm depressed. It means I'm wiped out, and that's just me.
Yeah.
And that's okay with that.
Yeah.
And I don't need to say what it is. It's just I can't do it.
Yeah.
So I'm really with you.
Yeah. But that social norms thing, it's like crazy to me because I'm like, I say that I really struggle with social norms, right? And I want to fight against them all of the time. And people go to me, oh, that's like a trait of autism. And I'm like, what? So I don't like acting and playing along, and most people do. And I'm the fucking one that's getting the labeled? Surely we should be labeling you lot as fucking weird that you're all willing to. Do you know what I mean, though? Like,
yeah.
And I get I get, and I just think it's amazing that somebody who's so connected to their body in the way that you are is working with young people in that way. And by the way, like just to say, and maybe you have like I'll ask you the question, but my experience is that a lot of teachers desperately want to do what's right for kids, but their hands are tied by systems and structures and stuff like that. So I think it's really important to say that because I ain't against schools, right? And that's why my son's school are fucking amazing, right? The only problems they have, the amazing teachers that he's got, is that they're sort of bound by the structures and systems around them.
Exactly.
Do you see that changing? Do you see like positive things happening?
All right. This is a tricky one. Like you, like there are some incredible schools, and also, as you say, like teachers are incredible, and their job is extremely difficult. There's so many structures. I would hope, Josh, but I was at the Houses of Parliament last January, and I thought, right, I'm going in there with, this is what, because I've trained a lot of teachers as well. So I've gone in there, I'm talking to some MPs, and what I could hear, when someone talks, you hear the words, but you feel what's underneath that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're saying everything right. I could not fault you at all. And then the last thing was, but we have to get past Now, I don't know if this will be controversial, but we have to get past treasurers who are white middle class men.
Yeah.
And at that point, you know, when you get that kind of scratchy needle on the record kind of feeling, and I'm like, I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle
Yeah.
here. Doesn't mean I'm not gonna keep doing what I'm doing, but I did come away from there because I was really excited, and I came away from there just thinking, how do we make this change? How do we do that? What are we up against?
Yeah.
Really?
Look, I don't care how controversial it is. I'll take it and fucking run with it, and I'll do the controversial speaking if you want. But this is half of the problem that we've got, by the way, when you've got a government that's ran by middle class or even upper class white men who
Yeah,
have no understanding of the issues that we face. Like, I think it goes deeper than that. I think that when you look at, like, you know, we're on a podcast now, but when you look at, like, even the podcast sphere and the self-development sphere out there in the world today, it's often driven. There's a lot of white men, and I am one of them,
yeah,
right? But
yeah,
like, that are having conversations that are all very, like, subtly saying we all have the same opportunity, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, like, you got this, you can do this, like, I made it, so can you, you know. And it's all very, like, it's all within your power, and it completely misses out the diversity of people that we have and the diversity of struggles that we face. And in some ways, I almost think that's another concern I have around the neurodiversity conversation, is that we then box in another group of people, you know. And it's like,
yeah,
you know, some of us don't even fit into any box. I don't feel like I fit into any box, you know what I mean? Because and we're all diverse, right? You know, in that sense. And so the fight is hard. The fight is really, really difficult, because when you look at treasurers, governments, fundings, I've been through it all with addiction. You know,
yeah,
the way that they stopped funding children of alcoholics is they said that there's more money in the addiction budget, but, like, they don't understand that children of alcoholics, in order for them to get a piece of the addiction funding, they need their parents to be engaging with services. Well, we know many of the parents aren't engaging with services, so you've just ripped away a load of funding for a load of these kids. So these funding pots and streams and all of that, it's a fucking nightmare. And it becomes, what you see is that the good that's needed to be done is not driven by, oh shit, we need to do something for these kids. It's like, how do we make sure that the funding goes to the right place and we get the most funding pots? And that's why you see, like, young people, I'm talking more young adults here now, but they'll go to see somebody, and then the whole thing becomes about, is this person struggling with addiction, or are they struggling with neurodiversity, right? And the only reason we need to differentiate the two is because we need to know which funding pot to push them towards.
yeah,
And so you will sometimes get good people that wanted to do the right thing at the beginning that are a little bit like, oh, I'd rather push this person towards addiction because they're taking up a bit of funding that could be given to somebody who don't have addiction and's just neurodiverse, you know? And that's when then everybody becomes a slave to that, to the system.
yeah.
And I don't think people can understand. You don't understand that, do you, until you walk into Parliament and start to try and change, you know?
Yeah, yeah. You go in there all like, I'm going to do something, and then you're like, oh shit, actually.
Yeah. I remember an MP. I won't name him, but he said to me on the side, like, Josh, what you got to understand is there's no votes in children of alcoholics.
Oh god.
And he wasn't saying that horribly, by the way. He was saying to me, you need to understand what we're dealing with. This isn't, you know, changing policy in this way is not about, you don't need to convince people in Parliament that it's needed. You need to convince them that it works in order to keep them in power. And that's the fight, you know, that's the fucking fight. And that's why, like, conversations like this, I guess, are so important, you know? So where do you see your work going from here? Like, what's your, like, dreams or ambitions with what you're doing?
Oh, that's a good question, Josh.
If we could have a magic wand, by the way, and you could, you know, like, where would you go?
Now, I ask my clients that question, Josh.
Yeah.
Now I know what it feels like when they say, "Oh, I don't know, I don't." I think obviously doing the breathwork training. So, and I know like that. What drew me to you was my friend saying, like in 2019, I'll follow this guy on Instagram. You need to follow him. And I remember looking up there, and I think I saw, right, here's an ex addict. You know, he's in recovery. He's doing men's work, which is phenomenal, and it's in the body. It's not in the head. So I was like, so I think for me, as soon as I did that, I was like, I'm gonna wait, and I've waited for years, as you know, for you to release your training. Like, I only want to learn with you more because of the safety. I would love to do more work around that. I'm going to continue all the young people's work, continue moving away from that medical model of disordered, and actually, you know, carry on that we are who we are, and this is how we experience the world. So still really working in schools, working in the community, working with young people, and to find like, and like as you asked, like, is it a dream, is really like where we are just accepting of each other, where we don't have to say, well, look at that person there doing these kind of things. Like, just let people live, shut off the noise, let people get on with their lives of what works for them, and not because and this is my opinion of what I see is people do the system. They go to school, and then they go to college, then they go to university, then they have their 2 children, and then they wake up in their 40s and they're like, fuck, this wasn't the life that I wanted. I've done everything society's asked me to do. And now I'm like, well, what next? Because I've been told this, and I don't know who I am now.
Yeah.
And so my dream would be that we don't get to that. And I see it in the schools with, you know, you can't go to the toilet, you can't drink, you can't eat, you can't do this. And by the time they come out, who knows who's listening to their bodily functions? Who knows who they are with somebody that's no longer telling me exactly what to do? So why can't we just go and explore? Why can't we learn, you know, how it's best for us to learn? And if that's moving or doodling, or that's fine for me. So that's my kind of dream, Josh. That,
Yeah.
you know, radical acceptance, like you said, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I imagine that world. I imagine a world where school isn't a system that just, if you don't fit into, you're told you're wrong. Like I see even my son now, you know, he says he wants to work on a building site or something like that. And maybe that is what he wants to do. But I also know that I had loads of aspirations, but by the time I was getting towards the end of school, the thought of doing any job where I had to sit down at any point just killed me. And I just wanted a job where I could expend energy. And I started looking at like factories and building, and it's not who I am, but it was a reaction to 15 years or whatever it is, 10 years at school. That was just like, that's what I want to do. And look, I'm not slanting those industries. Like, they might be the right industry for a lot of people. What I'm saying is it wasn't right for me. I was reacting to a system that fucking made me terrified of being in an office like I am now, sat down in a fucking chair. Do you know what I mean? And so that radical acceptance, and it's mad, isn't it? Because I keep talking about my son, but one of his teachers, I won't say what lesson it is because I wouldn't want to highlight who they are, but they emailed me and said that he has a real difficulty concentrating in this lesson. Do you know why this might be? And I just wrote back and said, because he don't like the lesson.
He's bored.
He's bored. He's fucking bored. What do you want me to do? Tell him to pretend to stop, like keep pretending not to be bored? Like I don't know. Like, I don't want to teach a human being to do that.
No.
Like I wouldn't teach an adult to do that. I wouldn't go to an adult. Oh, well, you don't like being around that person. Well, you fucking should pretend harder that you do. Do you know what I mean? It's bizarre. You
Yeah.
know, so it's like, you know, that like it's very easy, I think, to be a social commentator on the outside and go, in schools need to be ripped up and started again. But there is a real sense that like that's kind of what's needed. But I also have an understanding that that's not realistic, right? It's not realistic to go, next term, let's just fucking start it again and have a school where everyone can run about. Because I also know that you kind of, you know, you'll know, I've been in schools, right? There's fucking thousands of them. You've got to try and control them, right? So there is a certain amount of like we do have to restrict some stuff. So yeah, but I sort of share that. I share that vision with you, and that, you know, even what you talked about of reaching a certain I think we lose a lot of men, by the way, because they build a life around what they think they're supposed to be. And then before they know it, they're 35, 40, they're married with kids, and they're starting to realize it's all based around a mask that they've worn.
Yeah.
And like they're in a relationship maybe where they love their partner, but their partner loves who they pretended to be in order to get them to love them. And they don't know how to they don't know how to break free from that. And to break free from that is to break up the family that they love, and they'd have to go through this massive change, and they're terrified of and it's like, and you lose them, we lose them.
Yeah.
And it's such a difficult conversation, and that's why I think the men's work is so important and stuff like that, you know.
I really, I think it comes back to as well this societal thing of, you know, if you marry, you stay in there.
Yeah.
Even again, I go on the thoughts, Josh, that you can also break free in order for you both to be happy, or you can stay together because you're told you got married and you have to stay together, and you've got kids and you have to stay together. But actually, so there's all that pressure. You can't do this, or if you separate, it must be because you hate each other. That's not the case, actually. You know, it could. I'm talking from my experience. You know, you've had wonderful years together, but actually now, you know, maybe you're going to be happier without me. And maybe that's okay. And maybe we can make a different relationship that's not one that is defined by society, but actually is one that works for all of us.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do that.
Again, it's breaking down them social norms, isn't it? And look, I haven't really spoke publicly about it, but me and my wife separated at the beginning of last year.
Oh, okay.
And it was very similar to what you're talking about. It was so hard because I love her in many ways, but I also know that we're not each other's people.
Yeah.
And in some ways, somebody who's been through a divorce before, the first divorce was easier because in my mind it was like, we don't get on, we hate each other. And it was quite easy, you know, we just make each other the villain in the story.
Yeah.
And there's something to hang your hat on, you know. When it's more of this, like, we've had 12 amazing years together, but we need to learn to love each other in a new way.
Yeah.
That isn't marriage, that isn't like romantically together. It's very, very difficult, and it makes it very. It makes it. I think it just makes it's really hard for a lot of people. It's really hard, you know. The one parent ends up in most cases having to raise the kids a lot more without the other one. The other one loses having the kids in their life every single day in the way that they did. But you've got to learn to try and navigate that. And I did notice, by the way, that you said at the beginning, very successful co-parent, you know, and I think that when you have two good people, you know, that separate, that co-parenting and loving each other in that new way really, really is possible. And we should promote that more, that actually neither of you have to be the villain, even if one of you is the one that's decided that it's the right thing. You know, you can decide to separate for good reasons for both people, you know. And if you are not each other's people and you can't love somebody in the way that they deserve to be loved, you know, that's hard, man. That's a hard acceptance to free somebody so that they can have somebody really truly love them, and then go on that co-parenting journey of what that brings up. And it brings up, well, fucking someone else is going to love them now, and then I don't know if that's what I wanted, and that's hard, man, and that takes a lot of work, and it's a whole other conversation around it, I'm sure, but I do feel like, somebody once said to me, when I first separated with my wife, and you hear different things and people are saying different stuff, and somebody said to me, yeah, but that's because a lot of people buy into the cultish idea of marriage. And I was like, fuck, it's so right, man, of like, you just stay no matter what, and you lose each other in that, and you lose each other, and you lose yourself, and you both lose yourself, and then I think a lot of people end up, one of the only places where they don't get to be themselves is within their marriage. And that's a problem, So
Thank you. Really, thank you for sharing that, Josh. And I think one of the points you made about, the person's in love with the mask that you wore at that time, is kind of when you start to open up and grow, isn't it? And it's like, well, actually, this is who I am now, and that doesn't always work, and that's okay.
Yeah. Because if you become something that the other person, and this sounds kind of cold to say it, but it's the reality. If the true version of you becomes something that the other person didn't sign up for, then what do you do? It's not, and that doesn't make the other person a bad person. They fell in love with something that you're not anymore. And maybe they can't. Look, some couples, I imagine, fall in love again with the new version of but some don't.
Yeah.
And I think that, we have to have acceptance around those difficult stages. And I think I'm glad we talked about it, because I've never heard it talked about in that way either, by the way, on a podcast. So,
and I think, just to add, like you said, you don't have to vilify each other.
No.
Really don't.
No. She is an amazing woman. When I think about my own situation, she's fucking incredible, really. Like, I'm so lucky that she's the mum of our kids. I'm just lucky, you know? And I believe that over the years, we will have an amazing relationship in a new way.
Yeah.
Look, I'm sure there'll be fucking trials and tribulations along the way, but I do believe
that. Though, isn't it? That's life.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah. So we ride them when they come. And,
yeah. Amazing. Look, Jolene, this has been genuinely, maybe I say this a lot, but I've been I'm so happy with this conversation. It's been such a powerful conversation. I've nearly cried about 4 times for it, I think, and probably did cry a couple of times. But before I close this down, I always say to everybody, is there like any parting comments that you want to make? I'll hand you the floor to say anything you want to say to wrap us up, if there is anything at all.
Yeah, I mean, well, I want to say thank you to you and all the work that you're doing as well. I'm so in awe of that. So I think really is passing. I would say, if you can, if you're in the space and you're able to really connect and listen to yourself and follow what feels right for you, actually, and close off the noise. It comes, I still get that as well. And then I'm like, I'm just going to put that aside and create the life that works for me and the people that I love within that.
I love that. What I'm hearing is like, find you and follow that. Yeah, follow that and protect that. Listen, this has been amazing. I'm genuinely so excited to share it with people. It's been such a good we covered so much stuff as well. So good. So thank you. And I look forward to probably working with you in the future as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. I did tell you it would be dysfunctional. So thank you for sticking around till the end here. And if you have enjoyed this podcast, then please help me to grow Dysfunctional by sharing with your friends on social media. You can find me at Josh_FFW. And then wherever you're listening to this or watching this, please make sure that you've liked and subscribed, left us a 5-star review and a comment if your platform allows it. And I'll see you on the next one.